Jacob has been in Laban's service for 20 years. It is time to return to his father's land, the land promised him by the God he met at Bethel. Conditions are also becoming unfavourable. Laban no longer treats him so well, and Laban's sons are also grumbling as they watch their inheritance dwindle, but Jacob's wealth increase. They flee in secret, but Laban catches up with them. Before Laban can freely express himself, the Lord has a quick word with him in a dream. Laban is warned to watch what he says. Interestingly, Laban takes this instruction to heart, and although he demands an explanation of Jacob, nevertheless he is restrained in his conduct. He does, however, complain that Jacob deceived him, which is a bit rich. But one complaint is justified. The family gods are missing. Ancient readers would have known what these gods or images were, but they are debated now among scholars. They may have been images of ancestors, or they may have been little family gods, like the Roman lares, which protected the threshold and the hearth of the house, and often other things like bridges. They were not more major deities, such as would have their own shrine or temple. Presumably they brought luck and protection, and this may explain Laban's anxiety in trying to find them. Why Rachel has stolen them is not obvious, but their importance will become clear in chapter 35. Laban's accusation fails when he cannot produce the items, and now Jacob goes on the offensive. He reminds Laban of his diligent work and how any losses were borne by him and not Laban, which was not expected of shepherds. In verse 42, Jacob declares that were it not for God who blessed him, by now he would be returning home penniless, having been so relentlessly cheated by Laban. Here he refers to God as the fear of Isaac, and will do so again in the oath. It does not occur anywhere else. It is another word which is difficult to translate, and its meaning is uncertain. Perhaps Jacob invokes it here to remind Laban who backs his cause. A covenant is made, and a pillar and a heap are set up as witnesses. In Canaanite culture, such pillars would either be guardians or homes for deities to live in. In this scene, gods representing both parties are invoked. The sacrifice and meal sitting around them would ensure the attendance of deities who would eat the sacrifices and thus strengthen the covenant. Both parties here swear by the real God, and Jacob specifically by the fear of Isaac. As part of the covenant, Laban has the nerve to stipulate that Jacob should take no other wives. Had he dealt fairly with him from the beginning, Jacob would still only have Rachel. It is entirely Laban's fault that Jacob has 4. After this, as Jacob resumes his journey, he has another special experience, similar to that at Bethel. He meets angels encamped like an army. This must have encouraged him as he headed home. A major obstacle lies ahead of him. It has been 20 years since he fled from his brother, who was determined to kill him and was well capable of it. Jacob sends ahead messengers, and he refers to Esau as my lord and himself as your servant. This appears to reverse the blessing he stole from their father, who made Jacob Esau's lord. The description of his great wealth is also calculated to assure Esau that Jacob returns with plenty and is not therefore coming to collect his inheritance. Having learned that in response to this message Esau was coming out with 400 men, Jacob feared a slaughter. He must make some arrangements so that some survive, but ultimately he must throw himself on the mercy of the God who promised to be with him and bring him back. He prays one of the longest prayers in Genesis. Jacob is now alone at the river Jabbok at the crossing. This is a strategic entry and exit point in any land and was associated with supernatural power. It is an appropriate setting for what follows. Without warning or explanation, Jacob wrestles with what appears to be a man until daybreak. This is a deeply mysterious story, but is remarkable and important in its outcome. The man is unable to beat Jacob, and so, locked in a stalemate, he permanently injures his hip. But still Jacob will not let go, and the man is forced to plead with him. Jacob refuses to release him until he obtains a blessing. Jacob is always determined to gain a blessing. The man asks his name as if he does not know it, and then changes it from Jacob to Israel, because he has striven with God and humans and has prevailed. So will the nation which comes from him. Jacob asks his opponent's name in return, but it is not given. Perhaps it is pointless to tell him. Certainly they are not equals, despite the contest. Jacob instead names the place Peniel, because he has seen God face to face, and yet his life was preserved. The verb here is passive and implies that it was protected by God, not that his own strength saved him. There are other strange divine encounters in the Old Testament. Balaam is met by an angel who is ready to kill him and must be rescued by his own donkey. And stranger still is the episode where God ambushes Moses in the night and would have killed him had his wife not intervened. But we will get to that one when we get to Exodus. The final note of this chapter regards the tradition that ever after the Israelites do not eat the thigh muscle because of this episode. Israelite religion was rich with symbols and practices that brought them back to such stories as these. Circumcision would require the retelling of the covenant with Abraham, eating meat of Jacob, and unleavened bread with the bitter herbs at Passover of the Exodus. Thus, in their lives and in their bodies, they carried around these ancient stories and testimonies.